That I know, but when someone says monetizer, gets you thinking.
All right, so I'm spotlighting myself because now our recording is starting, and and it's 7 o'clock, and you know, as Jewish people, we always start on time. Anyway, so I'm going to start off with the blowing of the shofar, and that will wake up any of the Jews that haven't come yet. They'll hopefully hear the shofar and show up. So without further ado, of course, it's best to have your own shofar at home, but on the computer doesn't really work, but it's only custom nowadays anyways. Let me just make it a little higher so you can see. All right, so thank you everybody for coming. My name is Rabbi Pinchas Adler from Chabad of Pinellas County. I'm going to mute you all now, if that's fine with you. Okay, and if you're one of the rabbis talking after me, make sure you unmute yourself and spotlight yourself when you talk. So again, thank you everybody for coming here tonight. Very excited to hear about cremation or burial. I assume everybody that's on this call, believes in burial, but of course, being educated is the best thing. I read Rabbi Kornbluth's book myself, and I felt very much that I learned a lot. So I look forward to a great evening tonight. I'm going to pass on the baton to next in line, Rabbi Eber.
Thank you, Rabbi Pinchas. I just want to say one thing. Well, first of all, everybody, thank you for joining. But in the 14, 15 years that I'm a rabbi here in Pasco, there were people that wanted to cremate, and I explained to them why they should be buried, whether it was them, a spouse, or a parent. And I've yet to hear from anybody say, I wish I would have cremated instead of burying. And the flip side, people that did cremate and did not bury, I did hear, I wish I would have listened and I would have buried my loved one. So I think I read Rabbi Kornbluth's book also a long time ago, but from experience on the ground, this is what I've lived and what people told me. So with that, I will pass on to the next rabbi. I don't know who it is, but whoever it is, I will mute myself.
Good evening, everybody. This is Rabbi Levi from Chabad Clearwater. Thank you so much for joining us. I only have one wish, and that is for tonight's program to be disturbed by the sound of the shofar of Mashiach, and then we'll be reunited with all our loved ones, and we'll all go together to Jerusalem. I now turn the mic over to Rabbi Korf.
Good evening, everybody. Do you hear me? Just give me a thumbs up, somebody, if you can hear. Okay. Good evening. Welcome, everybody. Rabbi Korf from St. Petersburg. It's good to be with you all, to get together, have this social interaction, and to study Torah. My only comment I wanted to add on our esteemed rabbis from before me is that on the one hand, it seems like it is a very morbid subject, and it's hard subject to, making peace with the eventual mortality. As much as we know it's going to come one day. But I believe the way to look at it is that learning Torah is a mitzvah. Preparing for our mortality is also a mitzvah. Preparing for it in the Torah way that is. And therefore, every mitzvah we do actually extends our life. So when we do a mitzvah, even one that relates to after 120, it's something that we're doing that is actually going to be an omen for longer life and better life. So every mitzvah that we do, including this one, will bring more life. It's not a concession to death, but it's an omen for life. So with that, I turn it over to Rabbi Doron Kornbluth. I think he's the one who's up and going to be speaking with us.
Hi, everybody. How y'all doing? Why don't you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? Thumbs up, a thumbs up. I see mostly thumbs up. Okay, great. Great. So nice to be with you. I'm actually speaking to you from Israel. It is a little bit later in the night for me than for you. But I realized something a little while ago. You know that saying that like a dog is man's best friend? You've heard that? You know, that's not true. Coffee is man's best friend. Anyone who said that about dogs has never had a good cup of coffee. So I'm doing fine, actually. I actually went to bed. I slept for 4 hours. I got up. I had some coffee. I'm raring to go. So we're not in any rush. Hopefully we'll have plenty of time together. I'm going to outlast you guys, but here we go. So it's nice to be with you all. Thank you, all the various wonderful Chabad rabbis who organized this and invited me. I don't think I've actually been to your part of Florida before, but I have been to Florida many times, obviously. I'm a Canadian, so that's where we spend our winters. And a little bit about me. I grew up in Montreal, Canada. I came to Israel after university, and I've been here ever since. That's a long time, as you can tell from my balding head and the gray, grayish beard. So we're going to talk about an interesting subject tonight. And what I wanted to, when I think of the subject, I always think of a story that I heard. And it's a story about this elderly gentleman who's laying in bed, a little bit tired, thinking about life, calls over his wife of 50 years, whatever. Says, honey, come sit on the bed. A little bit strange. So she sits in the bed beside him. And he says, honey, remember when we were in our 20s and I broke my leg and you were there? Yes, honey, I was. And remember when I was in my 30s and I went bankrupt and you were there? Yes, honey, I was. And remember when I was in my 50s and I had my heart attack and you were there? Yes, honey, I was. So he says, I have something important to tell you. So a tear comes out of her eye. She leans in and he says to his wife, honey, you're bad luck. There's some subjects that just seem like they're bad luck. They're taboo. People don't want to talk about them. People don't want to hear about them. And, this is one of those subjects: death, burial, cremation, afterlife. It's just it's kind of like a morbid subject. Woody Allen once said, I don't want to achieve immortality through my work. I want to achieve it through not dying. We don't like dealing with this kind of stuff. I'll be honest with you. I don't even like dealing with this kind of stuff. I was never into this. I spent years and years, I'm fancying myself some kind of an educator. And so I would, write and travel and speak before Corona days, obviously. And my subjects were never death and burial. I wrote a book called Why Be Jewish? I talk about Jewish identity. I wrote a book called Raising Kids to Love Being Jewish, about how to pass on Judaism to your children and grandchildren. And I used to travel around, and I still do to some extent, but I used to travel around and speak about those subjects. And I was actually in Florida, of all places, interesting, about 10 years ago. And I forget exactly what the subjects of my talks were. And I open up a Jewish newspaper. I don't even remember what it was called. If it still exists, you'll probably know. And in the Jewish newspaper in Florida, about 10 years ago, there's an advertisement from a Jewish funeral home offering Jewish cremations. I don't know if this still exists. And I was in shock. I'm like a traditional Jewish boy from Montreal, Canada. And look, there were all different types of Jews growing up, and some people did more and some people did less. It's life, But there were some things when I was growing up that all Jewish people did. We know that just growing up in Montreal, there were some things that were just universal amongst all Jewish people. Jews didn't eat bacon. Jews didn't pitch on Yom Kippur. Jews didn't buy retail, and Jews didn't cremate. I mean, this was just like the norm. It was like shortly after the Holocaust, like who cremated? It was just like, and by the way, that was true for millennium. For thousands of years, Jews buried the dead. Roman historian Tacitus, when he described us to his compatriots, when he was a few paragraphs saying, who are these Jews? He said, the Jews bury rather than burn the dead. This stood out for thousands of years until recently. In the last couple of decades, there's been a massive shift. Amongst all Americans, Jews and non-Jews, 330 or 40 million Americans, the pendulum has swung, and it is now a majority of Americans. Over 50% of the American dead, Jews, non-Jews, whatever, are choosing cremation. The Jewish community is actually not that far behind. We don't know exactly, but we do know that it's high and it's growing. Rabbi Elchanan Zon, who's the head of the Chaver Kadisha, the Burial Society in Queens, and he's sort of the rabbi's rabbi on these matters, he did a little study and he found, and get these two sort of conditions or caveats, whatever you call it, he found that in Jewish funeral homes in the New York area, 25% of the requests are for cremation. You get that? That's the people who live in the New York area, the most culturally Jewish part of the United States, and people who actually choose a Jewish funeral home. Many people don't even bother, they're less affiliated. And that's 25%. So it's at least a third of Jews nationally are choosing cremation. It may be higher in some areas, and it's going up. So here is my question for you. Some people, feel that computers are impersonal. I hear that, but I actually find that Zoom can be fun in a way, because there's this great function at the bottom of your screen called chat. Now you may use Zoom, 10 hours a day, and you're an expert on it, or maybe your first time. But this is how we're going to interact a little bit. At the end of the session together, we'll do a question and answer. We can open up and turn off the mute and stuff like that. But for now, chat. You tell me, why are people, Jews and non-Jews, Americans, why is cremation more popular today than ever in our lifetimes? 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, it was a very small percentage of people who chose cremation, of all types of background. Why are people today, Jews and non-Jews, let's just focus on the United States, for instance, why are people choosing cremation? There may be reasons that you've thought of, your own choices, family members, things you've read, movies, whatever it is, you tell me. I see that we have, lack of knowledge, excellent, easier, environmental. Oh, you guys are good. Wow. What an educated, intelligent crowd in Florida. I'm impressed. Climate change, environmental, cheaper, lack of knowledge, easier, right? Cost, fear of being under the ground. You're very good. Unaffiliation, right? Very big people don't know. Hey, you're hitting all the major ones, guys. This is great. Anything else? Anything else? Okay, don't feel bad if you're running late, you want to add in later. This is a good way for us community. Concern we're running out of space. Very, very nice. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to divide our time together into a couple of sections. We just did a little intro talking about the fact that it's an uncomfortable subject, but it's an important one. I mean, this is in a way the last decision you'll ever make. It's kind of a big decision, so it's important to have some information to make your decision. Important to have some background, read a book, go to a lecture. It's an important one. And that things have changed. We're now going to go through these reasons that you have suggested as why people are choosing cremation today. I think you've hit the top 10 or all the main ones. I want to analyze them. As we're going to go through them, you're going to notice that some of these reasons are valid. They make sense, actually. Oh my gosh, I'm saying it's valid. Yeah, some actually have logic to them, and some don't. We're going to analyze which do and which don't, and then we're going to flip it, and we're going to go into why Judaism and Jews have always focused on burial. You get the structure of what we're going to do together in our short time? First, we're going to analyze the reasons that people are choosing cremation. We're going to say which are strong and which are weak, and then we're going to quickly go over to and why does Judaism focus on burial. Okay, so the first thing that somebody mentioned over there was cost. Let's leave that till the end. Okay, it's a separate sort of issue. We'll get to it. Don't worry. Okay, first thing that I see, many people mentioned environmental concerns. I'm very eco-conscious. I'm very environmentally conscious. It means a lot to me. I teach my kids to be that way. And so this is a real one. There's two main environmental critiques of American burials. And you put them into two categories. One is the land itself, the use of the land itself, and one is what you put in the land. Two separate issues, right? One is how much land is being used. One is what you're putting into the land. So in terms of how much land is being used, the phrase that cremation societies like to use, they call themselves cremation societies, by the way. I have a pet peeve about that because it implies they're nonprofit. Oh no, they're a very big billion-dollar profit. But anyways, the phrase they like to use is land is for the living. Anybody ever hear that phrase? Yeah, put your hand up to me. A couple of rabbis are nodding. Land is for the living. Oh, very good. I see Karen. I see Ona, if that's how you pronounce your name. I hope so. That land is for the living, right? So it's a very powerful phrase. The idea that it evokes is like this. We have a limited amount of land in the US. Let's talk about the US for now, but the world's the same thing. We have a limited amount of land. We have a growing population. And the implication is, isn't it selfish to use that land for the dead? Why not leave it for the birds and the trees and the kids playing in the playgrounds? Land is for the living. So it's a very powerful argument. It's a moral argument, by the way, which is always the most powerful kind. And I have to be honest, if it was true, boy, would that be a challenge. Meaning that if you really had to choose between land is for the living or land is for the dead, I hear the question, right? The problem is I ran the numbers. I'm not the first person to run the numbers, and I'm not the last person to run the numbers, but I did it very carefully, and it's been checked, and I've never had anyone, in the book that the rabbis mentioned before that I wrote on the subject is called Cremation or Burial, A Jewish View, Mosaic Press. So this came out, let me just check the year, I think it's 2012. This came out in 2012. I've spoken to many, many thousands of people in many locations around the world, probably over 100 by now. And I've never had anybody question these numbers, ever. Here's the number, okay? I'm not gonna give you a lot of stats because it's boring, but get this, just focus on this one statistic. If every American who died, and we're not talking to every American, we're talking to the less than 2% of Americans who are Jewish. Okay, that's not I'm not talking, if you want to find out about non-Jews, I'm glad to talk about it later. But right now we're just focusing on the Jewish community, right? If every American who died, that's just under 1%, meaning Western countries have about a 1% death rate. If you have 340 million people in the USA, means you'll have just under 3 million deaths a year. Now, thank God there's a lot more births and there's immigration, so population goes up. But that's how much, about 1%, that's just under 1%. So it's about 3 million, just under 3 million deaths a year. If every American who died were to be buried, get this, ladies and gents, it would take 10,000 years to use up 1% of America's landmass. 10,000 years to use up 1%. And we all know that very few cemeteries would last that 10,000 years anyways. There is a ton of land. True, if you had to choose, there might be a theoretical question there, but you don't have to choose. If you want to be buried in downtown Miami or downtown Manhattan, you have a problem. But within 30 or 60 minutes of every metropolitan area, there's a ton of land. How often do you go to a cemetery anyway? Now, I'll give you at the end, I'll give you some resources to check all the numbers and everything, but I have a very simple way of proving this to you. Next time you fly, assuming that Corona lets us fly again, next time you fly, look down. Oh my gosh, ladies and gentlemen, there's a ton of land. This is true in the US, this is true in Canada, this is true in Latin America, this is true in Africa, this is true in Europe, this is true in Asia, this is true in Australia. This is true everywhere around planet Earth with 3 exceptions: Hong Kong, Singapore, and parts of Japan. By the way, there are solutions for those 3 places if you happen to be from there. So the idea of land, there's plenty of land. There's no problem at all. We use more land every year building new Walmarts than we do for cemeteries. Plenty of land out there. Next, the more serious environmental critique. What goes into the land? Now, see if you notice the commonality between these 2 things. There's 2 main environmental critiques of American burials. See if you realize the commonality. You can write it into the chat if you want. Rabbis, you are not allowed to answer this question. Ladies and gentlemen, the 2 environmental critiques of stuff that we put into the land. A, metal caskets. Golden Gate Bridge after Golden Gate Bridge after Golden Gate Bridge. You have to make the metal, you have to form it, paint, you put it into the ground. It lasts hundreds or thousands of years. Rusting, it's terrible for the environment. Second thing that's really bad is embalming. For those who don't know, embalming is when they remove the liquids, essentially the blood, liquids from the body, replace it with preservatives. Formaldehyde is the classic one. They're trying to make it more nature friendly and environmentally friendly now and do other things, but that's the one that works. Toxic chemicals in order to preserve the body. It doesn't, like, the body still decomposes. It just takes longer. Essentially, it's for viewing, right? That's that kind of idea. So, and it's a lot of toxic chemicals, gallons and gallons for each body. Terrible for the environment. Anybody notice what's common about these 2 things? Metal caskets and embalming. Whoa, Celeste, you got it. Good job, Celeste. They're not Jewish. We don't do either. Jews insist on simple wood caskets. Here in Israel, by the way, although they carry the body in a casket, when it's actually put into the ground, there's no casket at all. The body is in burial shrouds, a talus. In Western countries, where in places where you need a casket, they put a casket, it's wood, simple wood, pine box, simple, not fancy, right? We don't use metal, and you're not allowed to embalm. It's considered desecration of the body. The point being that yes, many American burials are highly problematic, not ours. Jewish burials have always been considered a model of environmentalism. Environmentalists are not in favor of cremation. Cremation uses a ton of fossil fuels. I don't know about you, but we're all trying to get our cars to be hybrid and electric cars. And suddenly we're like rolling out the ovens and firing up the electricity. It's a tremendous amount of energy being used. And there's many municipalities around the world that don't let crematoriums be beside schools. Think about that. Why is that? Because they release chemicals into the air. The worst of which, by the way, is mercury, right? Until recently, they would use mercury. It's the same thing, right? Now they've ceased using mercury, but all of us of our age might have mercury in our fillings. So environmentalists are in favor of what's called green burial. The main 2 components of green burial: no metal caskets, no embalming. There's other ways of how you construct the cemetery, etc. Some of ours are better, some are worse. That can always be improved. That's minor stuff. But the main thing is environmental concerns. Jewish burial is a model. Next thing that you mentioned in terms of reasons that people are choosing cremation. Well, some people mentioned that people are unaffiliated today. They just, by definition, the less traditional people do fewer traditional things. And as things kind of move on in Western society, people don't do traditional stuff. It's kind of a fad today, if you've noticed. Cremation is in certain circles as kind of a fad. Well, I was thinking about this idea of fads, and I'm not wearing a tie right now. I usually don't wear a tie. I'm a pretty relaxed kind of a guy. On Friday nights, when I go to synagogue, or now we don't have synagogue here in Israel, really. We have prayer services in my parking lot upstairs. But I try and wear a tie. And my kids, my teenagers, I have 5 teenagers, guys. 5, really, okay? I woke up at 1 a.m. after a 4-hour nap, My teenagers were still up. They hadn't gone to sleep yet. We're not even going to see each other. Anyways, so my teenagers are always complaining about my ties. My ties are too wide. My ties are too thin. My ties are too wide. I always get mixed up. They want me to, they're too wide now. So they want me to throw out my wide ties. And I refuse. Why do you think I refuse to throw out my wide ties? Because I know and you know that within 5 years, they'll be back in style. Fads come, fads go. Just because a person is not that involved, like that's not how you make decisions. You just follow the crowd. On big things, fine. On what flavor ice cream to choose, maybe. But on a big decision like this, I mean, no matter who you are, what you are, hopefully get some information, right? Another concern that some of you mentioned, looking at the list over here, is decomposition. That it's a little gross. So ladies and gents, I will try not to gross you out in our short time together. You did realize that this talk was about burial and cremation, and it's probably going to be a couple of uncomfortable things. So if you really are like squeamish and you can't hear anything gross, I suggest you, turn off the sound for the next 30 seconds. Decomposition is disgusting. Let's be honest. We all remember high school science labs, okay? It's not nice to contemplate. Agreed, no denial. But let's think about cremation for a second. When I was close to you, when I was in Florida 10 years ago, and I was speaking, I was actually speaking for a lot of Chabads at the time. I still do. I'm actually not traditionally, I don't come from a Chabad family, but I have such love and respect for Chabad around the world and what they're doing for the Jewish people. Round of applause, everybody. Look at these Chabadics. They're incredible people. And so I'm speaking for different shluchim, different Chabads around, and some federations, I forget. And that's when I saw that ad about cremation, and I got in my whole quest, and eventually resulted in my book, Cremation or Burial, right? There's about 3 years of research I put in, serious research. And I read everything I could find on the subject. I got the manual, I got the blueprints, literally I got the blueprints of the crematoriums, right? To find out about how much electricity they're using, what they're actually doing. I would talk to funeral directors. I don't think anybody in recent times has gone into it like I've gone into it. And I want to tell you what the single biggest surprise was from my research. I always assumed, I always assumed that cremations were quick and clean, kind of like a microwave oven, right? You put the thing in, you press the button, a couple minutes later, it's over. Sorry, guys. Typical cremation today lasts 90 minutes to 2 hours. If you're like me and Corona has done a number on your weight, I've put on over 10 pounds in the last 6 months. Am I the only one over here? It's like depressing. So if you're bigger, okay, it can be up to 3 hours. If you happen to be obese, it can be up to 4 hours. During that time, the body, excuse me for saying, the body is not still and quiet and calm. Oh no. The muscles are contracting and expanding. The body is moving. The brain is sizzling. It is a violent, gross, disgusting process. We just don't see it because it's behind a wall. Now, I'm not going to come here and tell you honestly that decomposition is pleasant. They are both kind of gross. Decomposition or cremation, they're both disgusting. But get this, and by the way, if I only had one thing to share with you, this idea I think might be it. Burial is the natural way of every living thing. A plant grows, it blossoms, goes back to Mother Earth. An animal is born, runs around the forest, goes back to Mother Earth. A body goes back to the ground. Cremation is artificial. It is a man-made last attempt at control. There's different traditions in the world. Some want to speed up the process of death. Some want to, right, prolong it. Speeding it up, that's cremation. Fast, get it done. Save a few days, save a few months, whatever, get it done, right? Short burial service, what they call a toilet assumption. It's unpleasant. Get rid of it. Just move on. Move on. Oh, Shiva, 7 days too long. We'll make it 3 days. We'll make it 1 day. We'll make it an hour. Like denial. Get it over with. That's one approach. Denial of death. There's another approach, prolonging it. It's a different form of denial, by the way. Prolonging it is metal caskets, embalming, above ground mausoleums to try and make it like take longer, cryogenics, where they're freezing the body or the head, neurogenics. I mean, all this stuff is the same idea. Judaism says, don't speed it up and don't slow it down. You've had 70, 80 years of living your life. 6 days we work, 1 day we rest and accept that God runs the world. In our final decision, just accept. Don't exert control. So we're evaluating the reasons why people choose cremation. We talked environment, the land itself and what goes into the land. We talked about the speed. Some people, by the way, talk about what I call movement, mobility, meaning, listen, I live in Florida, my kids live in New York, my grandkids live in California. You and I both know that no one's going to be visiting my grave. So why bother having one? Everybody hear the question? I see Diane is nodding. Same with Ona, right? Everybody hear the question? Like it's a good question, right? In the old country, so to speak, you'd have generations and generations that would be in the same place, a family plot. When I go back to Montreal, unless it's the winter, when I go back to Montreal, I go to the cemetery, visit the graves of my grandparents, my great-grandparents, who I knew. It's a family plot. It's a very beautiful thing, right? But who has that today? People move, they change cities like we change shirts. So that's the question. Why bother having a grave if no one is going to visit it? So it's interesting. Question for you, use the chat function. Well, actually, I'll do it with I can do it with a thumbs up. Okay, like this. Rabbis, you are not allowed to answer this question. Okay. I do a few things in life. One is that I write, I write on Jewish topics and written a few books and things like that. The other is that I'm a speaker. Used to be in person. I used to travel around a lot. Now it's on Zoom. Word is getting out, which is nice. And I'm also a tour guide. So if Israel ever opens up again, God willing, soon, and you want to come to Israel, you can be in touch with me. I'm a tour guide. And this is a true or false. Actually, Roy, you might have seen my book. I wrote a book. Let me see if I can get it for you. I wrote a book on Israel with a photographer. It's called a gorgeous book. It's called Inspirational Israel. So I worked with a photographer that he did all the photos and I did the stories and the text. It's really nice. Here's my true or false, if you've seen this book or if you haven't, right? The biggest chapter in the book, my favorite place to bring people in Israel is the grave of Moses. True or false? Thumbs up, it's true. Biggest chapter in my book, my favorite place to bring people in Israel is the grave of Moses. Thumbs up, it's down. Thumbs down, it's false. True or false? I see the Ethnikers are saying no. Karen is saying no. Celeste is saying no. Rochelle is saying no. Geo iPhone is saying yes. I don't know what your name is, sir. You're saying yes. It's a beautiful screen behind you. Susie is saying no. Feldman's, what do you think? I bring people to Moses' grave? Yep, they think yes. Anyone else? And he's saying no. Okay. So ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, it's not true. I don't bring people there, and it doesn't appear in my book, Inspirational Israel. And there's two ways that a person can know that. Number one, Moses never made it into Israel. The very end of the Bible, of the Torah, says that he was punished in some way. The simple understanding, he hit the rock instead of speaking to the rock. The commentators talk about what that really means. But the point is, he never made it here. We can hop on a plane in normal times. He didn't make it here. Second reason, we don't know where his grave is. The place of his burial was hidden by God because he was so great that people would come to do it as some kind of idol worship. So get this question. Has anyone ever visited the grave of Moses? Never. in 3,300 years. And although we know that archaeologically, cremation was prevalent, was the norm in those days, God did not choose cremation. God chose burial. Because in our modern minds, we connect two things: having a grave and visiting a grave. And we think that if nobody's going to visit, then why bother having one? Well, God showed in the Moses example that those two things are disconnected. If you like visiting graves, wonderful. I actually do enjoy, that's a strange word. I actually do connect to visiting graves. Don't worry, I don't go every day. I'm not a weirdo. But I connect. You have no obligation in Judaism to visit graves. If you connect to it, wonderful. If not, fine. But it has nothing to do with whether or not the body deserves a grave. So, ladies and gents, I think we've handled them all now, the main ones. If not, we can do more. We'll have questions and answers at the end. But it's interesting that as you go through the reasons that people choose cremation, all of them fall away. They are all based on misinformation, fake news. It's not true, with one exception. There is only one reason that actually has logic behind it. We went through all the reasons. If we missed any, we'll do more later. All the reasons are untrue, except one. What's that one reason, ladies and gentlemen, that actually we have to acknowledge is true? In general, it's cheaper. Exactly. By Alter, I see the credit card. Very well. Exactly. In most cases, not all cases, you can do a cheap funeral and you can do an expensive cremation. But on the whole, most cremations are cheaper than most burials. And it can be a $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 difference. So now we have to flip it. So why is it that Judaism and Jews throughout the ages have always insisted that it's worth it? Gentlemen, I assume that when you proposed to your wife, you gave her a ring, you didn't take a plastic ring from the bottom of a Cracker Jack box, right? You actually bought a nice ring, I hope. Some things are worth the money, right? So Judaism claims this is worth the money. And I want to explain why. I'm going to give you, and we're going to move quickly, I'm going to give you a number of reasons. I don't have time to do all of them, but I'll give you resources at the end to find out more. I'm going to give you some of the reasons why I believe Judaism focuses on burial. Number one, in the Holocaust, in the Kovno ghetto, there was a rabbi. His name was Rabbi Ephraim Oshry. He actually survived the war. And he tells the story of one day he's in the ghetto, and a Nazi SS officer, blonde hair, blue eyes, bursts into his room. He believes that he's about to die. And the Nazi officer slams the door behind him and starts speaking to him in perfect Yiddish. Rabbi, I'm a Jew. I have fake papers. I looked the part. This is how I've survived so far. Don't worry, I don't do anything bad. I push papers in the back of an office. He said, but I'm a very sick man. I only have a few weeks to live. And I know what they're going to do to me. They're going to bury me with a Nazi cross over my body, surrounded by Nazis in a Nazi cemetery. Rabbi, there's only one way that I can imagine getting out of this. If I am cremated, I will not be put in this Nazi cemetery with a Nazi cross over my body. Can I be cremated? And Rabbi Oshry responded to him, my dear, dear child, no, you can't. A Jew must do everything they can in order to avoid cremation and be buried. In the Holocaust, they murdered us twice, so to speak. First killed people and then didn't allow for Jewish burial. I take groups to Poland. I mean, I'm a guide in Eastern Europe. It means a lot to me, and that it's hard for us to deal with. But Rabbi Oshry was explaining, but for us to choose it, and he brought source after source. The Bible actually says the Torah actually says. We actually just read it. For those who want the source, it's in the book of Deuteronomy 21. Here it is. Yeah. 21:22. If a man shall have committed a sin whose judgment is death, he shall be put to death, and you shall hang him on the gallows. His body shall not remain for the night on the gallows. Rather, you shall surely bury him. Kavor tikbarenu. Meaning that death penalty in Judaism is an extreme rarity. Talmud says that if a court of law would put someone to death once in 70 years, it's a bloodthirsty court, meaning it's a deterrent measure. Even in the case when it actually happens, when the guy is evil enough and fulfills all the conditions that we actually hang him, the rarity, once in a 500 years, whatever it is, bury him. All the more so the rest of us. The Bible goes out of its way. The Torah goes out of its way. Abraham is buried and Sarah is buried. Abraham buys Hebron, right, to bury Sarah, the cave. Sarah is buried. Rachel is buried. If I was creating a religion, I don't know if it would be a big part of the religion I was creating. We focus on life, right? L'chaim. But Judaism actually has a surprisingly strong focus on burial. It's all over the place. The verses, the Talmud, Maimonides, the Code of Jewish Law. The first reason that it's worth the extra money, it's a core part of our religion, a surprisingly important core part. It's a mitzvah and a huge one. Okay, next. Anybody ever see that, God forbid, someone dies and the mourners, the relatives tear kriya? God forbid, you know what that is? When tearing kriya, it's actually a double, like a double phrase. Kriya means tearing in Hebrew, right? So like tearing a tear, right? And by the way, just as a side note, I've noticed that in some modern funerals that I've seen, instead of tearing the outer garment, people are putting on a little ribbon and like cutting the ribbon. It's a very nice sentiment, okay? I understand it's coming from a good place. It's actually not the point. The point is, it's supposed to be your clothing. It's supposed to be you're destroying your clothing, your outer clothing. It's supposed to hurt and be a wound. It's not supposed to be someone gives you a ribbon and you cut the ribbon. Anyway, that's a separate point. But I want you to, the 7 relatives, right? The mother, father, son, daughter, brother, sister, spouse, symbolic of your pain band, exactly right. So imagine the following image. When a person dies, the earth itself tears kriya. A wound is opened up in the ground. It is painful. It is not normal. It is not okay. There is pain. Slowly, lovingly, the body is put back into the ground. Family, community members cover it gently with earth. There is healing. Life goes on. But there is always a headstone. There is a scar. The person is never forgotten. The earth itself tears kriya. Modern society tends to forget about death. We don't want to hear about it, don't want to see it. That's unhealthy. Healthy societies need the presence of the dead. Young people tend to see life as, oh, what's happening now? What's happening now? Life is not a snapshot, what's happening now. Life is a movie. We're born in the middle and we end in the middle. And I need reminders of where I'm coming from, what people did for me, and what I can provide for the future. Healthy societies need the presence of the dead. Next, we talked about Judaism's high priority, the idea that accepting it, having it as death as part of life is important. Next, if you were to make 2 maps of the world, map number 1 is a map of monotheistic belief, where people believe in one God versus where people believe in no gods or many gods, right? Monotheism versus, on the one hand, versus atheism and polytheism on the other hand. And the second map you would make would be a map of burial versus cremation. Those 2 maps, if you were to superimpose them, they are so close. Meaning, in other words, where people believe in one God, there is a natural inclination to bury. Monotheists bury much more than non-monotheists. By the way, just take a look at the world today. India believes in many gods. Cremation is the norm, right? When Europe was Christian believing, they outlawed cremation for 1,500 years, from Charlemagne until the 1960s, right? Now that it's post-Christian, cremation is normal. Even in the United States, by the way, cremation rates are very different in the Bible Belt versus the quote unquote secular Northeast in California. Where people believe in one God, they choose burial. There's exceptions, but they're exceptions. The rule is very strong. Why is that? There's a lot of reasons. First of all, we talked about how Judaism is the Torah is the key text of all monotheistic belief. But it's not even without the mitzvah. The Torah says at the beginning that every human being is created b'tselem Elokim, in the image of God. Now, that's not a physical thing. God doesn't have a body, but it's teaching us there's something divine about our bodies, about who we are. And you don't mess with the divine image. You don't burn it. You ever notice, well, let's say it like this. When you were 8 and your pet dog Spot died, I can virtually guarantee that your parents did not say to you, hey, honey, you bring Spot, I'll fire up the barbecue. They didn't do that, right? What'd you do? You buried Spot in the backyard, because get this. Somebody stop my video.
We don't see you.
Okay, now I'm back. Can you see me now? Great, okay. It said the host stopped my video. I don't know if I said something wrong. So get this. We bury treasure and we burn garbage. Things that are important to us, things we value, we bury. Things we want to get rid of, we burn. God forbid, rabbis, it's only a theoretical example. God forbid there's a fire in the local Chabad, and you want to go and save the Torah scrolls. Raise your hand if you'd be a hero and save the Torah scrolls. Well, it all depends, because if the firemen are there and they tell you, yeah, there's no problem, it's just a little bit of smoke, we took care of it, there's no risk, you can go in and get your ritual objects, of course, then go get the Torah scrolls. They're the holiest objects we have as Jews. But if the firemen say, no, it's dangerous, you're not allowed to go and get the Torah scrolls. Because as holy as the Torah scrolls are, holiest object we have, you are holier. Doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, you're old or young, you're more observant, you're less observant, doesn't matter. What do we do with a Torah scroll that is unfixable? An old, damaged Torah scroll? We bury it, because we bury treasure. We bury things we love. We burn the garbage. Next reason. I'm moving quickly because I want to have time for questions and comments. We can get more into anything that you want later. I'll give you resources as well. Okay. Imagine the following scenario. God forbid, her husband dies after 50 years of happy marriage. She sits Shiva, gets up after Shiva, takes off her black dress, takes a shower, puts on her red party dress, puts on the makeup and the high heels, and she goes downtown to the clubs cruising for a new man. Does that sound normal to you? I mean, of course not, right? When you're a partner with someone, when you love somebody, when you're together with somebody for 50 years, you don't just move on. It's important to you. The body and the soul are partners. Raise your hand if you have ever visited a Jewish convent or a Jewish monastery. I know you haven't, because there aren't any. You ever think about why? What, you think Christians and Buddhists in the Far East, and you think they're stupid? They're not stupid. It's a different philosophy. There's billions of intelligent people. What is their philosophy on the subject? They believe something very simple. They believe that if you want to be spiritual, you want to get close to God, you have to deny the physical. Don't get married, don't eat good food, sleep on the floor. It's an ascetic life. What do we believe? We believe that God is good and he created a good physical world. And you have to be in charge of the physical world. Horse, the rider on the horse, not the horse on the rider. I can't be hedonistic and selfish, but it's a good world and a good physical world. And the body is not my enemy. The body is my partner. I couldn't have children without my body. I couldn't give charity without my hand. I couldn't hug a depressed person without my arms. The body is good. So we don't treat it badly. We don't burn it. We don't get rid of it. We treat it with love and respect. The body and the soul are partners. By the way, that soul doesn't forget its body. Our mystical sources say that during Shiva, the soul is going back and forth between its body that it's attached to still and the house, the Shiva house, to hear what's being said about it. It's an amazing thing. They're partners. We treat it with respect and love. Another couple of points, and then we'll get to some questions and comments. Like this. The rabbis here, and maybe some of you also, may be surprised that I have not mentioned at all, and we're almost, we've been together for a while. I have not mentioned the one classic reason in Jewish sources for burial. Anybody know what that classic reason is? The resurrection of the dead. Everybody hear this concept? Now, I got to be honest with you, ladies and gents. When I think of the dead coming back to life, I'm a child of the 70s and the 80s. Okay. Do you know what I think of when I think intuitively? My first thought, I'm not happy about this or proud of it, but it's true. We're friends now, I can share with you. What do I think of when I think of the dead coming back to life? Thriller, Thriller. Remember Michael Jackson, the first great music video of the modern era? 7 minutes long. All the zombies are coming out of the cemetery. So like when you think of this idea of the resurrection of the dead coming back to life, it sounds weird, man. They're still making zombie movies. It's like stupid. Well, ladies and gents, there's many core beautiful ideas that because they were filtered over the millennium through a different religion or through Hollywood, they seem stupid. Of course they seem stupid. That's not what it's about. The dead coming back to life, the idea is that physicality counts. We were just talking about it now. Physicality is good. It counts. It has a role to play. The example that the Talmud gives is that there's this bone called the luz bone that never destructs. Now, if you ask a forensics experts, and I have, there's no such bone. What does the Talmud maybe mean? Well, I think of it as DNA. I mentioned to you that I'm a tour guide. I used to be a tour guide when people were coming to Israel. I would take families and communities around. So if you've been to Israel, I'm sure you've been to Masada, right? Raise your hand if you've been to Masada. So, they found in the 1950s, Yigal, the archaeologist, the head of the dig in Masada, found 2,000-year-old date pits. They extracted the DNA, and up the road in En-Gedi, there are palm trees growing. Physicality lasts. That's what the Talmud is telling us. That's what our tradition is telling us. It's important. You don't mess with that. You don't burn it. Take a seed, right? Put it in the ground, and it grows. Take a seed and burn it and put it in the ground, and nothing grows. There's a soccer pitch in Scotland that doesn't let people put cremated remains onto the pitch anymore because it destroys the grass. It's not a hint to the future, the destruction of the past. One last idea, and with this I will end, and then we'll have some time for questions and comments. We talked about the fact that it's a core part of Judaism. We talked about the fact that this is what God chose, that humanity, that healthy societies need the presence of the dead. We talked about the tearing kriya, the earth itself. We talked about the body being important. The Sefer Torah is buried. The body is buried. Bury treasure, burn the garbage. We talked about the soul, the body, resurrection, that physicality counts, and we accept it. One last idea. I don't know where I got this from, but it resonates with me, and I hope it will with you as well. I have the following kind of monologue in my head, where an elderly Jewish gentleman says to, his kids, listen, I want to tell you something serious for a moment. I may not have been the most religious Jew in the world. I didn't have much of a Jewish education. I didn't really do that much. Knowing more, maybe looking back, maybe I would do things differently, maybe not. I don't know. But there's one thing I do know. I was born a Jew. I'm proud to be a Jew. And I want to die and be buried as Jews have died and been buried for thousands of years. On my last decision, my last statement to planet Earth, I wanted to say, here lies a proud Jew. I want to be in a Jewish cemetery. I want to have those Hebrew letters at the bottom of the gravestone. I want the rabbi to say the prayers. I want the tahara, the purification process that's done before. I want everything because I want my last statement on planet Earth to be, here lies a proud Jew. So ladies and gents, I don't know about you, that somehow touches me. Let's summarize and then we'll get to questions and comments. We started out with this reality that huge numbers of people, Jews and non-Jews today, are choosing cremation for the first time in modern history. And we went through all the reasons that people choose cremation, and they're actually based on misinformation. It is not better for the environment. It does not solve mobility problems. It is not, quick and clean. All these reasons fall apart. They're just not true, except one. In general, it's true that cremation is cheaper, right? By the way, there is a new cemetery in Florida. I don't know exactly where. That is a very nice, actually, Jewish cemetery. That is a low-cost Jewish cemetery. There's another one in New York. They're trying to do one. So you talk to your Chabad rabbi. If finance is the issue, there are solutions for it. There really are. Okay, but the other solution is just plan it early, and it's the difference is it's a cup of coffee a day. Like it's not a week. I mean, it's not that much of a difference if you plan it early. I'm a big favor of pre-planning. This kind of question destroys families at the worst time. At the worst time, there's grief, there's rushing, what you're going to do. And so why leave any questions? You make it very clear in your living will. This is the name of the Chabad rabbi. This is his phone number. I want it completely done according to Jewish law. It's already paid for. Shalom, peace. Everybody gets along. No problems. That's what I recommend. So it generally is a little more expensive, but it's worth it. And we went through only some of the reasons. I don't have time to share all the reasons, but this is a core part of our religion. This is better in terms of a person's connection to their past and their future. Healthy societies need presence of the dead. We bury treasure, we burn garbage. And that last statement of this fellow, that here lies a proud Jew. Ladies and gents, thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure. Rabbis, how do you want to handle this? You want to open up the muting, or you want to do it by chat? I have time for questions.
Maybe first start going through the questions that are in the chat. That's always better than.
Okay, very good. So, okay, Ona, am I pronouncing it right, Ona? Yeah, Ona, is that how you say your name? Okay, so you asked about COVID. I've actually checked this out.
Yes.
To my knowledge, and I've talked to several professionals, there is absolutely no risk whatsoever of bearing with COVID. You do not hear any government saying it. You do not hear any medical authority saying it, because it's not true. People say, oh, cremate, that'll get rid of COVID. I don't want to infect people. COVID is passed through our breath, right? Remember when this whole thing started, it was a big deal about surfaces. You should still wash surfaces and wash your hands out and sanitize your hands out, 100%. But you notice that's not the main thing anymore. because it doesn't last that long, right? The main thing is being in a closed room with other people who are breathing. This is why the rabbis right now I know are going to lengths to figure out ways to do safe Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur davening, and I'm sure your rabbis have figured out how to do it, right? The shofar has to be pointed away from people. There's no risk whatsoever in terms of burial of victims of COVID.
Because I have a friend who, unfortunately, her husband died from COVID recently, and he was buried up in New Jersey in a Jewish cemetery. And she said that they insisted he had to be put in some kind of metal box before he was put into the wooden box. They wouldn't even let her, I guess the cemetery wouldn't even let her near the grave until the grave people had already started to put the dirt in. She commented to me that the hospital did not, I don't know if the hospital, but they didn't close his mouth. So she was like appalled, and that they wouldn't wash him and nobody could sit with him. So,
yeah. So I'm actually not surprised to hear it, because people are freaking out and coming to all kinds of assumptions. It's simply not true scientifically. There's no government that requires it. Here in Israel, by the way, where we had some of the most draconian lockdowns, I don't know what the situation now is in Florida. Here we're unfortunately kind of in a second wave right now, because it was like the first 2 months was a complete lockdown. I mean, literally complete lockdown, 100 meters from your home. That's all we were allowed to leave, right? I had 5 kids home for like 3 months. It was, you can imagine. So and then it opened up, and now it's now it's coming back, unfortunately. But even in Israel, no such requirements whatsoever. Around the world, no such requirements. Individual cemetery owners who are freaking out and don't want anything happening, they're saying this and they're saying that. It's not true. The Chevra Kadisha can handle everything. They have the legal and moral authority. They can handle everything. The Chevra Kadisha is the burial society, for those who don't recognize the phrase. It's actually not called in Hebrew or in Aramaic, whatever. It's not called traditionally the burial. It's called the Holy Society, Chevra Kadisha, the only organization in Jewish history called the Holy Society.
so
That's
they
how
are
beautiful it is.
still washing bodies that have had COVID. And
They have ways of doing it. The people who are involved in the Tahara cover themselves, right? There is no problem. By the way, I've been to Taharas, the purification, the washing. I'm going to say something that sounds a little strange. Again, I think I'm a pretty normal person, but one of the most beautiful things I have ever seen in my life, literally, is a Tahara. Women do for women, men do for men. The way the body is treated, the love and the respect. Prayer said, please forgive if we have managed. It's unbelievable. What a beautiful way, right? When the baby is born, they take it from the mother, they wash it, they wrap it up, right? Give it to the mother. And when we leave this earth, after 120, hopefully, right? The body is washed and wrapped, and it's an amazing, beautiful process, and it can be done today, no problem. COVID has no effect on it.
One other quick question. My parents were religious. My grandparents were religious. We have a family plot in Long Island in a Jewish cemetery that's obviously it's all Jewish. When I was young, they always used to say you can't bury above the ground. Well, the last time I went there before I moved to Florida to see my parents and my grandparents and my grandmother's sisters, et cetera, they had, cement structures, not a mausoleum, but cement structures that were above the ground.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so unusual. And is it something they're allowing now, or?
So there's 2 kinds of Jewish cemeteries that operate in the United States right now. There's a more traditional Jewish cemetery, which follows Jewish law. And there's a cemetery for Jews where it has some Hebrew there, but they don't necessarily follow the traditions or anything like that. Good intentions. I'm just saying they don't necessarily understand or even know. Jewish funeral homes in general, I mean, they're for-profit businesses. They just do what people ask. They're not following the rules. So I recommend that's what you do is what you make it very clear that you want it done right. That's why you put the Chabad rabbi there. Above ground is a problem. We're supposed to be in ground, decompose naturally, and trying to avoid that kind of stuff.
There are some very religious people buried in that cemetery.
So I look, I don't know how they do what they're doing, but we'll let the rabbis handle it. Just make sure that it's done according to Jewish law. That's what the
So
rabbis.
the fact is that there a really religious person can be buried in a cemetery where they are choosing to not, people are not choosing to always follow being buried in the ground. I mean, does that make it sacrilegious? I mean,
Listen, I don't want to spend too much time on the details. I know there's other people who want to ask, but I will tell you, it doesn't always matter what the person beside me does. If they do a tahara or they don't do a tahara,
okay.
right? As long as what I'm doing is in line, it's okay. It all depends on the situation. And the important thing is that you get the Chabad rabbi involved. They'll make sure that it's all done right.
Right. Okay.
So anybody else have, let me just see.
Just on that, that's a really important point. And as Ona was pointing out, there's different cemeteries do it differently here. There's even Jewish funeral homes here. So you want to make sure, as Rabbi Kornbluh said many times, make sure you get your Chabad rabbi on board with it, talk to them, because unfortunately, like you said, there are cemeteries for Jews and there are Jewish cemeteries.
Yeah. Okay. So I see that someone asked about moving a grave. So it's actually interesting. It depends why. To move a grave to Israel is actually in general fine. And you see that happen over history. If something is going to be destroyed, there was a big highway that we're making in China, and there was one cemetery from the World War II, exiles. There was like a Jewish cemetery in China that was like right in the middle of the highway. So we didn't have a choice. They were putting through the highway. Political pressure didn't work, and you got to move the graves. But otherwise, to just move a grave for no reason is not a good idea. It's considered a desecration of the body, and it should be avoided. People are asking over here that is it okay to be buried outside of the Jewish section of the cemetery? So like this, there's two separate issues. One is cremation versus burial, and one is a proper Jewish burial. Notice we've gone back and forth a little bit, but those are two separate issues, right? Remember the example from Rabbi Oshri in the Kovno ghetto, where the Nazi was really a Jew, and he said, I can be cremated, and the rabbi was saying, based on Jewish sources, verses and Talmud and Maimonides, that no, you have to avoid cremation. Do everything you can to avoid cremation. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, this is not a guilt trip. If you're like just about any Jew, you probably have people in your family that were cremated. They could have asked to be cremated. You could have pressed a button, whatever. Judaism is not big on guilt. I know that's surprising to people. The stereotype is that Jewish guilt. We're not into guilt. You did what you thought was right. Okay, so what should you do if you made a decision like that? If people were cremated, make a donation, in the person's memory to the local Chabad. They didn't ask me to say that, but it's true. They deserve it, and move on. Like we're in terms of l'chaim, life. Do good things in the person's memory. What we're doing now this evening is to focus on better decisions in the future, right? So. So the first thing that the Nazi cemetery story was that first thing is just no cremation. Second thing is, when you're going to do it right. That's the final statement that we talked about. I'm proud to be a Jew. I want to be buried and die as a Jew. I'll probably die first. I want to die and be buried as a Jew, as Jews have done for thousands of years. And I want to do it right. I want to do everything. And that's why you have to get the local rabbi, get the Chabad rabbi involved. Okay. Next. Someone says, steel casket, not a wood box. It's a problem. We don't believe in it delaying, aside from the environmental issues, terrible for the environment, but we don't believe in delaying decomposition, and we don't believe in speeding it up. We believe in just allowing nature to take its course. So that's why we strongly encourage, insist on wood burials, wood caskets. Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, Rabbi Kornbluh.
Sure.
I heard this many, many times that children say, I know burial is the right thing to do, cremation is wrong, but my father, my mother, whoever I'm, responsible, they told me that that's what they want, and how can I not listen to them?
Great question, Rabbi Yossi, right? That's who answered.
Yes.
Yeah, yes. Good. Thank you for that question. Yeah, everybody hear the question? let's say you're sensitive to it and you know intuitively, because of what I said or before or what the rabbi said, you know intuitively you believe in burial, right? But the person requested cremation. Don't we believe that you should do what a person wanted, their last request, right? So interestingly, this happens with parents sometimes, by the way. So it's interesting. I don't know about you, but in life, I notice that the question in life is usually, not always, but usually not between right and wrong. I am not going to rob a bank. I am not going to murder somebody. That's not the issue. The issue is like when you have like two mitzvahs and you're not sure which to do. Like burial is a mitzvah, and listening to parents or listening to the dead. You know, the Talmud actually says, "Divrei hameis mekayim." We're supposed to try and do what the dead person, you know, requested. So you have two values that are in conflict. That's when it's hard, right? When one is clearly wrong, murder, I'm not going to do it. But when we have two values, and that's your question, it's an excellent question, I think. So like this, ladies and gents, ask yourself the following question, okay? When do I understand more about reality? When am I closer to God, closer to knowledge? Now, when I am in my physical body, or after 120 years when I'm upstairs? Hopefully I'll be upstairs. When am I going to be closer to God and understand more about reality? Then, right? After 120. So what Judaism explains is, we're the ones who taught the world about honoring parents. The 10 Commandments, honor your father and mother, right? We taught the world that. We're big believers in doing what people said, and even for trying to fulfill the last will of a person who's deceased. So there is an exception to that rule. Although it's our rule, and we taught it to the world, there's an exception to it. If the person made that request based on a lack of understanding, a lack of knowledge, and deep down and now in heaven, they wanted something else. They chose cremation because they thought it was better for the environment, because they didn't want to be a burden to you, right? Because they didn't want to spend the money, because they didn't want anybody to visit or not visit the grave. They whatever they selected. Now upstairs, they're looking at things very differently. And we say, listen to what their soul really wanted and what their soul really wants. And it's the exception that proves the rule. We actually do not listen to them. We do not cremate. You didn't want to be a burden? Burying my mother is a burden? This is my last thing of respect I can do for you. You wanted to save the money? I spent more money on my last vacation, Mom. What are you talking about? You don't think anybody's going to visit the grave? I want to visit the grave. Or maybe you'll have a grandkid or a great-grandkid that's a little more traditional and they'll connect to it. Or maybe it's just a statement that I'm Jewish and I'm proud of it. So we bury. I hope that helps Rabbi Yossi.
An emotional, I find there's much more emotion involved than intellect. And I don't have a good answer. I don't know if, a good intellectual answer does the job.
Well, that's why we're speaking now, meaning that
beforehand, exactly.
Exactly. Meaning that, and this is why, rabbis are dealing with this on a weekly basis, daily basis, monthly, whatever it is, all the time. And I'm very big on getting the word out while people can think and learn, because when you're in the midst of it, it's very, very hard emotionally to deal with anything. And that's why prevention is so important. Okay, Celeste, I see you asked about cremated remains in a Jewish cemetery. It's a common question. So I want to tell you a story, and not a story, it's a true historical fact. Remember we talked about my ties that get bigger and wider and thinner and wider and thinner, right? Cremation is a fad, it comes and goes every once in a while. So in the 1890s, 130 years ago, there was actually a cremation fad in England. And it started hitting the Jewish community. And people asked your question, Celeste. If I choose cremation, can I put those cremated remains in the Jewish cemetery? And the rabbis in England, the Orthodox rabbis, the establishment, whatever, the traditional rabbis, the rabbis made a decree, no burying cremated remains in a Jewish cemetery. Now, I want to explain from the point of view of Jewish law, of halacha, that is very surprising. Why? Because if you have a Jewish cemetery and you want to fix up the garden, you can take earth from outside and put it in. Cremated remains have no significance whatsoever. There's no DNA left. I checked this out with forensic experts. They're not into cremation because there's nothing you can check later. It's just burnt dirt. It means nothing. So why did the rabbis say you can't put it in a cemetery? It's nothing. The answer is they were trying to send a message. The message they were trying to send was, don't think that you've covered yourself and you've done the Jewish thing. It's not the Jewish thing. And we want it to be clear what the Jewish way is. So if you happen to be the owner of cremated remains, your parents, your grandparents, relatives, whatever it is, I'm not saying to throw it down the garbage, okay? Like, that's just disrespectful. Technically, it's actually okay, by the way. This has nothing to do with the person. It's just dirt. The person is long gone, right? It's been burnt out of them. But just dump it in the backyard, or spread it in the water, whatever. It doesn't matter. There's a famous cult movie called Big Lebowski. You ever hear this? I never actually saw the movie, but I saw the clip. There's like this famous clip that the friends have. They want to put their remains out on the water, and so they dump it in the Pacific Ocean. They dump it in the water, and then the wind changes. So be careful where you're doing it. But the point is, treat it respectfully, and just get rid of them, and say goodbye. But no, they shouldn't be in a Jewish cemetery. Some Jewish cemeteries will allow, some won't. Nobody will really know. But the point is, like, it doesn't have. There's no reason for it to be there. And be careful, because you don't want to give the impression that, okay, cremation is like not ideal, but it's a second choice and still okay if I put it in a Jewish cemetery. It's really not. Okay. Anybody else?
I just point out two practical things.
Sure.
Yeah, you've been saying the whole time, that's why we're having this discussion out before it gets emotional. I actually heard a story recently. Someone in my synagogue was speaking to her father, and she found out that he was planning on being cremated, and she was shocked. And then she had the discussion, and the father called me, and he changed the burial. So the point is that you'd be surprised, some people that your loved ones are planning on being cremated, and you just never had the discussion because you never thought of it. And so one practical thing I would say, first of all, from today is just have that discussion with all the people that you know in your life. Second of all, of course, if some people want to read the book, as Rabbi Kornbluth put up, he has a website. You can read different links, but also you'll have the ability, if anybody wants to we'll be able to get you Rabbi Kornbluth's book at a discounted price. So please, after the lecture, if you want his book, it's really a great book to have, a great resource. Contact your local Chabad rabbi to get that book.
Okay, Diane, you asked about in a military cemetery, right? That's what you asked? Okay, hi, Dan. So this one actually is personal to me. I will tell you, my oldest son, I told you I have 5 teenagers. I also have one in his 20s. My oldest son is a combat officer in the IDF right now. He's actually serving in the North. If you've heard, there's been some problems in the North. He's a first lieutenant, and the military is very close to my heart. My father-in-law is a veteran and is dealing with the VA all the time. I take it very personally. You can have your cake and eat it too. There is a way. Talk to the Chabad rabbi.
We did that. I mean, my dad passed away December 2011, and I'm from New York. Was living in LA for 26 years. So my son had 2 bar mitzvahs because my dad couldn't travel. My parents couldn't travel. So we'd ask the rabbi back in New York what to do, because my dad's wish was always, I want to be in a national cemetery. And the rabbi was adamant. He's like, no, in his heart of hearts, he really wants to be in a Jewish cemetery. So I couldn't go against my dad's wishes. So he was buried out, Long Island. But everything was kosher, tahara, all the traditions, the pine casket. We had the rabbi, we did the prayers kind of on our own because we were restricted what we could do. And with, throwing the soil in with the traditional, with the shovel, but we did as much as we could. And the next day, we did everything. And then my mom unfortunately passed away 70 days later. So had to do the same thing. And right now, I'm kind of engaged to a retired Air Force, American Air Force pilot. And so kind of the same things come up. I mean, I'm gonna. So.
I hear. Arlington has a section for Jews.
Mhm.
And there's other military cemeteries where it can be done. There's a way of consecrating the ground around it. Talk to that rabbi. Again, the most important thing. Again, I'm big into the military. I mentioned my son and my father-in-law, so it's a big thing.
Right.
That being said, if you had to make a decision, the Jewish part of me is more important than the military part.
Right.
And so you choose the Jewish burial. But in most cases, from what I've seen over the years, you don't have to make a decision. You can have your cake.
Because that's what we did anyway, because I couldn't go against my father's. And by the way, I used to receive your emails years ago, the parenting emails, like 10 years ago. So glad I know you were the one doing this. So thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you very much. Any other final questions and comments? Anything you want to share? Okay, so ladies and gents, I put on the chat, if you look now, if you think of something that you weren't able to address, you didn't think of, I'm not good at the phone, but I am good at emails. I can't say that I will respond immediately, but I will try and respond if you have any questions. That's my name, daronkornbluth@gmail.com. And the name of the book is Cremation or Burial, A Jewish View. It's got a lot more information. I only gave you some of the headlines of some of the reasons, but it's important to have. And if you want to have this discussion with others that you love, the book is a great way, forgive me for saying so, the book is a great way to get that discussion rolling. You can get it at the mosaicapress.com, or Amazon if you want, whatever. Or so Rabbi said you can arrange that. And there's a website that has some of my material and other people's material. The best website for Jewish material, of course, is Chabad.org. There's actually a couple of videos of me doing different things there. There's also a website directly on this subject. It's called peacefulreturn.org. I think they have English, Hebrew, and Russian now. It's got me speaking. It's got some other people. It's got top 10s. It's got articles. So if you're interested in more information, just you can get there, no problem. Okay, rabbis, anything else?
Thank you very much.
The rabbis want to finish off.
Okay, I have a problem though. It's now 3:20 in the morning and I am completely awake. What do I do now?
You find another group to talk to.
I need to work it out with Texas and California, so it'll be there. Anyways, Rabbi,
we can start a Talmud class now.
Okay, you can start one. I'm going to bed. Thanks, everybody. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
It was
very much.
wonderful.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good night.
Rabbi Pinchos.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Ishakayach.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I think somebody's getting the Fabrisen.
Who's eating? Yeah. Anybody wants the food? Anybody has any food?
Levi, open the fridge.
Went dark. I want to know who's Michael Adler. I see he's on here. Is he related? Anybody knows who he is? Michael Adler, if you're there.
Georgie, you're in between a bunch of rabbis now. Be careful what you say.
Yeah, now we know who the last few people are the people that put their video off and walked away. Where's